I don't think you heard me.
So this one is going to be a different kind of video. Now normally whenever I do plot hole videos, it's normally revolving around Dragon Ball, but hey, this is a comic book channel too, so I thought why not, let's go on ahead and talk about this. So I'm currently binge watching the Teen Titans series from the early 2000s, the one that everyone is so fond of, and just reached season 2 of this series, so allow me to explain the plot of the episode before I get on with the whole point of the video. In the first episode of Season 2, called How Long Is Forever, the Titans are fighting a villain named Warp, a character from about 100 years in the future. Now, he comes to the past to steal this clock, a valuable artifact that's priceless in his timeline, and on his way back to his future timeline, Starfire decides to pursue him into the wormhole leading to the time period he comes from. They fight in between timelines before Starfire breaks that thing that allows him to time travel, and so they stop at a time approximately 20 years after the present timeline. In this timeline, all the Titans split up due to Starfire's disappearance. Cyborg is rendered obsolete, Beast Boy becomes a circus animal, Raven somehow goes insane but is in complete control of her insanity or something like that, making her enlightened, and from how I understood it at least, and Robin is already Nightwing, so he's doing his own thing at this point. Now, Warp gives a brief breakdown on exactly how time travel works to Starfire, explaining that the reason he steals this clock in the present is because in his timeline this item is missing, and that's because history had stated that Warp went back in time to steal it, cementing it as a thing in history to begin with. Future Cyborg also explains to Starfire that the Titans split up and tells her what became of Raven and Beast Boy. Starfire is obviously hurt by this, as the last thing she would want is for her friends to be separated for any reason whatsoever. She then takes it upon herself to track down Warp and return to her own timeline to fix the past in exchange for Warp fixing the future. Nightwing then shows up and helps Starfire on this mission by calling all the future Titans, and close to the end of the episode, Starfire and the future Titans defeat Warp by messing up his time items to get him back to being a baby before Starfire returns to her present timeline. Now this is where all the trouble starts, so just bear with me. She returns to the moment right after she initially disappears, with this clock artifact retrieved from Warp. So she then explains what became of the future 20 years from now, and then they all share how much they don't want to drift apart, then take part in Starfire's Tamaranian festival. Now, before I go on, I just want you guys to know that maybe I'm just looking a little too deep into this, but with my decent amount of time travel knowledge at this point, I'm pretty sure that there has to be a problem with this whole entire thing. So, like I said, just bear with me, we're going to go on ahead and get into it. Now, first of all, Starfire just committed a time paradox, and I get it, time paradoxes tend to happen in time travel stories a lot. But this one confused me, because the future in 20 years is said to have happened because of Starfire's disappearance fighting Warp in the present. And since that's the case, we can only assume that everything that happened in this episode has already cemented itself in the course of history. That would mean it was inevitable that Starfire was able to defeat Warp with the future Titans and get back to her present timeline. But the reason this is a head scratcher is because this timeline couldn't have happened with Starfire still being gone all that time. Because even if it somehow did, there had to have been a Starfire from that timeline somewhere in that equation, but somehow there just fucking isn't one at all. And since our present Starfire safely returned to the past like she should have, that begs the question of where the future Starfire would be. And even if you want to say I'm looking too deep into it, which maybe I am, that still begs another question. If the future Starfire from that 20-year future timeline doesn't exist in that time period, then where else would she be? Either future Starfire absolutely has to be in that timeline, or she's lost somewhere else in time. She has to be somewhere. I don't know any other way to explain it. She can't just be absolutely nowhere and non-existent by any means. She absolutely has to be in that timeline somewhere, and if she's not there by any means, then she would have to be in a further future timeline taking place 20 years after that 20-year future, or basically 40 years after the present timeline. Basically, the whole point of what I'm trying to say here, because this whole time travel stuff can get really tricky to figure out, is that the future Starfire should still exist somewhere in that equation even though she hasn't been seen or mentioned, because it just doesn't make any sense why she wouldn't. All the Titans talk about Starfire's disappearance when there should be another in the future, because the Starfire we witness on screen safely returned to the present time period and therefore is now written in history. I'm just saying this whole entire thing could have been explained a little bit better. Like, I feel like they should have at least mentioned that maybe there could have been like another Starfire in another timeline, and that's why she's not in that future timeline, because of her disappearance 20 years prior, but I mean, I don't know. All in all, the episode was fine, and I did enjoy it. I just have a tendency to heavily evaluate things that involve time travel. But what do you guys think? If you've watched the OG Teen Titans and you remember this episode, do you think I'm onto something, or do you think I'm just looking too far into it? Or do you have a better explanation than the way I explained it? Be sure to also let me know what you guys think, and also some ideas on what you'd like me to do on this channel. But that's pretty much it for today's video, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy it, and if you did, be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. That's all for today, guys. Matrox Gaming out. Peace.